If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you smash the like and subscribe buttons. If you're listening to our podcast, go leave us a 5-star review. All of our links can be found in the video description or show notes below. Hey, welcome back to the Average Joe Finances podcast. I'm your host, Mike Cavagioni, and today's guest is Robby Kuster. We're going to talk about a topic that, for avid listeners of the show, you may remember from episode 201. So I'm pretty excited to get a follow-up on where you guys are at with Green Coffee Company. I'm really excited to have you on the show and share your story, because we talked a little bit before I hit record and you shared like some things that you were doing during the time of that recording. So it'll be pretty cool to get an update and then talk about you, Robbie, and what you're doing. So welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Mike. I'm happy to be here and to provide an update for your listeners on the Green Coffee Company and what we've been up to over these past 3 years.
Awesome. Awesome. Speaking of, let's get right into that. Let's do what we always do with every podcast episode. And we want to know a little bit more about you. So if you could, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Share your story. Who is Robby Kuster?
I was born and raised in New York, outside of New York City, and followed the traditional life of going to high school, going to college, majoring in economics, thinking about going into investment banking, a more traditional path, someone in my shoes. But what I wanted to do before starting that career was live abroad. I'd studied abroad for 4 months in Peru and I loved it. And so I wanted to have that experience again before I started my traditional career. And so I lined up a program to come to Colombia and teach English as a foreign language for 5 months. When I got here, the program got delayed over and over again. And while I was waiting for it to get started, I ended up finding other opportunities here. And the primary opportunity that I found that kept me here was working for the Green Coffee Company. It was a company that was just getting started back in 2018 with the purchase of 3 small farms, the idea that they were going to consolidate it, just 3 farms, and sell coffee into local markets. When I joined the team, I actually delivered first check to one of the large scale farmers that we purchased the farms from. I've been with the company since the beginning. And what was originally going to be 5 months of teaching English has turned into my whole career of raising money for the company, building financial projections, investor presentations, basically doing the investment banking work that I may have been doing at a bank or at a large company, but instead doing it at a startup in Colombia. After 4.5 years here, I fell into this opportunity. I wanted to expand my horizons. And so I ended up going back to the States and going and getting my MBA at Duke in North Carolina, which was an amazing experience. I got to work in other industries, in agriculture, in wine, and in private equity for sustainable agriculture. I got more broad experience still in the ag side, which is the area that I'm most passionate about. And then as I was evaluating options of do I stay in the US or I had continued to follow along with Green Coffee Company and did some part-time work for them as they continued to grow and were really making waves. I decided that I loved the work that I did. I felt very passionately about our impact locally and what we were trying to do in the coffee sector, and that I decided to dive back in head first and move back to Colombia. So I live here in Medellin, and I've been back with the company full time for a bit over 2 years. And it's been amazing to continue to work with the business as we've grown and expanded into the US and brought a roasted coffee product into the US for US consumers. It's been very exciting for me to go from New York through many rounds of growth, go back to the States, and then realize that I still had a big career prospect and a big opportunity ahead of me here in Colombia.
Yeah, Robbie, that's awesome. And I have to ask before I start asking you any other questions about Green Coffee, but where in New York? Because I'm from New York too. I'm from Long Island. So when you say outside of the city, I'm curious as to where outside of the city.
Sure, yeah, I'm from Rye, New York, 20 miles north of the city.
Right on, right on. Good pizza and good bagels.
Actually, on the bagel side of things, that's one of the main things that I do when I go back to the States. One of the first meals I have is a hand-rolled bagel from a local spot there. It's nice. Always on my list.
Yep, awesome. Your story's funny, like compared to Cole's, when Cole went down there with his intent of what he was trying to do, and then you fell into this by going down there to teach English, and then that kept getting delayed. You started looking for new opportunities, and then you found Green Coffee Companies. What's really interesting to me is that jumped right in as they were starting up, and you were the first person to deliver that check, which is pretty cool. So I know from the last time when I talked to Cole that you guys had purchased 3 farms, right? I think you said that earlier too. And you started looking for sustainable ways, right? Sustainable ways to grow coffee, keep the farms like, and the reason why it's called Green Coffee Company, right? Keep it sustainable and no pollution and all of that, right? I love that because I feel like there's not a lot of people that look at sustainability in the agriculture world as much as they should. What made you start looking at coffee? I think at the time when I was talking to Cole, I don't think you guys were selling in the US at the time. I think it
No,
was
yeah.
only like I think it was like coffee was getting shipped back to Europe. I think there was some going to Europe and trying to remember.
Yes. The way that the industry or the way that coffee is typically set up, it's a very long supply chain. So you grow
Yeah,
coffee, you process it through a number of different processes. You depulp the cherry, you wash it, you dry it, you ferment it, and then you mill it and sort it. So there's all these processes for coffee. And because of that, literally it touches many hands. Most of, the industry's history, it's been very fragmented. So you have
right,
small farms, especially in Colombia, you'll have small farmers grow the coffee. Most farms in Colombia, like 95%, are 10 acres or less. So they'll grow the coffee, process it a bit themselves, and then they'll sell it to a cooperative who will then sell it to a processing plant who will sell it to an importer, to a distributor, right? It touches all these people, and everyone needs to make their margin. And so with
right,
all of these intermediaries, both the consumer and the farmer end up getting squeezed. The farmer ends up having to pay much lower prices for their product. And then the consumer, especially if they're looking for something that is like ethically sourced and fully traceable and all that, they often feel like they need to pay an insane amount of money to make sure that they're not buying unethical products. And even then, they still may not know. The goal of the business really within the first couple of years of operating became we can make an enterprise play. We can go from 3 farms to 45 farms. We can build out some of the best processing facilities in Colombia. No one's really invested in processing at the farm level for decades. Many of the machines that farmers use are from like the 1940s. It's technology, it's very old technology. There's opportunities to waste less, to use less energy, and to get more value out of the coffee that you produce. So we could make this enterprise play and then own more segments of the supply chain as you go from farm all the way to the end product to roasted coffee and ready to drink cold brew cans and K cups and everything else, ground coffee. So the goal became that we wanted to create a fully vertically integrated business at scale, right? The at scale part is very important because if you're a roaster, or excuse me, if you're a hotel chain, you may love the idea of supporting a small farmer and buying 100% direct traceable coffee or anything else like that. But the quality can be wildly inconsistent. You can have a great year one year with the farmer and a bad year the next year. And then trying to manage that whole process is incredibly difficult if you're a hotel, right? So the idea for us is we can provide that full traceable story and actually back it up with, on the ground videos and photos and certifications and third-party reviews and everything else that guarantee what we're doing is actually true in a way that typical roasters in the US, they buy from importers who purchase from someone else. It's very challenging to know where the coffee actually comes from. And for us, we can say it literally comes from our farms, right? I can go out and visit them. It's much more tangible. That's how the business really changed from when you were talking to Cole to where we are now. It's really been this explosive growth of going from just a local Colombian operation to a fully vertically integrated channel. So this year was the first year that we started making that final transition to selling roasted coffee into the US. And that's where we are this year. We launched formally both private label and branded products in the US for our coffee. That's the next step of the business. And that's how we tie the loop. And that's really when we're going to become very profitable, is going from just farming all the way to the end product. That's how you guarantee margin and limit volatility. That's what we've been trying to do. We're at a very unique time in our business when things are really kicking off.
Yeah, one of the key things that you mentioned as you're talking there is the vertical integration, right? And
Yeah.
I talk about this with real estate investors all the time too. For the investors that are buying like apartments and then they'll buy their own management company and they'll put everything in, they vertically integrate there too, right? And that changes everything with your profit margin with what you're getting on your returns and what you can actually give back to your investors, which is huge.
Yeah.
So by vertically integrating Green Coffee Company and removing all the middlemen, you're cutting costs immeasurably, which is amazing. And on top of that, it makes it so you can provide an affordable product and not be killing the farmers at the same time with how little that they would be getting because, like you said, everyone has a margin to make when you go through all these different parties, right? When you're completely vertically integrated, you don't have to worry about that margin anymore.
Yeah, 100%. And it
Yeah,
ties in with the story. One thing that's really unique about coffee, one thing that really drew me to it, the industry itself, is that the end consumer, it's one of the few agriculture products that the end consumer really does care a lot about where it comes from. You don't necessarily know where your soy comes from or your corn, right? Those products are integrated into chips and all sorts of things that we eat. For coffee, the average consumer has an opinion about coffee. And if you talk to people who care a lot, people will love Ethiopian beans or Brazilian or Sumatran or anything, right? In the US, for us, what drew us to Colombia is a fantastic reputation in the US as being a great destination country for coffee. So,
absolutely.
it taught like the vertical integration and everything else, like customers care about where coffee comes from. And that makes it not only valuable on the efficiencies gained, but also on the end product and like the marketing aspect of what we can sell to the consumer.
Yeah, my dad always drank Colombian coffee, right? So that's what I remember all the time from New York. That's the stuff he would buy from Costco and everything, just these giant tubs of Colombian coffee.
Yeah.
I live in Hawaii right now, so I'm a little biased. I buy Hawaiian coffee, and I've gone to a couple of the coffee farms out here. It's pretty cool and do the little tasting tours.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
so when you were describing like the process of how they make the coffee, how you deshell the cherries and everything, I'm like, oh, I watched that whole process happen. I thought it was pretty neat. But
Yeah.
I think one of the things that I remember talking with Cole about too was the investment side, right? You even said it too, like your investment and banking hat, you kind of wore it, but for GCC, right? I know when I talked to Cole, I think it was you guys had about 50 million assets under management, right? Not as many investors. Where are you guys at today? Because this is what now, maybe 2, 3 years later, or 2.5 years later, with how much you have under management. What kind of things are you doing with your investors?
Absolutely. Yeah. When you chatted with him, I think we were at around 50 million. We've now raised over $100 million from high net worth individuals, retail investors in the US, typically, for the most part. But we have over 500 high net worth individuals who've invested with us. That money we've been putting towards the processing facilities. I think when you talk to Cole, we may have just completed our first processing facility. We now
Yep,
have a
that
second
sounds about
one,
right.
and we've completely retrofitted the first one. We've also purchased a lot more farms. Like I said, we're up to 45 farms. We also buy a lot of coffee from farmers around us. We buy it in a unique way where we purchase the raw cherries, which is different. It allows us to gain more value out of the coffee that we purchase. And then for farmers, then they don't have to process the coffee. So they save a lot of time and risk and they get
Mm.
paid right away. It's a win-win. We've been establishing these buying points as well. Really, the big piece of the puzzle has been this vertical integration and the full platform building. One of the less exciting things, but extremely important for us as we become a big corporate is SAP implementation. So this is like your back end business software, inventory management, making sure your inventory systems align with your accounting systems, right? When you just start a company, like when you're doing $1 million of revenue, you can do all of that with Excel. But once you're doing like $37 million of revenue, you have warehouses in Chicago and South Carolina and around the world, you end up you need integrated systems, an
100%.
HR team with integrated systems, right? So all of that platform building takes a lot of time and energy and hiring the right people. On the US side, now that we've expanded into the US, we manage the Juan Valdez brand. That's the Colombian coffee brand. That was a process to negotiate to be the exclusive providers of Juan Valdez in the US for grocery stores. Been doing a lot of back end work to have the full platform built out. We manage a dry mill as well, which is the like another piece of the puzzle in that vertical integration process. So all of this money has been invested into building out that platform. The platform includes the physical assets of the farms, the infrastructure, which we constantly improve, as well as the sort of like softer assets, which I would say is like research and development, figuring out how to monetize the use of the cherry layer, things like that, where you're investing heavily in new processes and in the right team in brand building for Juan Valdez. We're the official coffee of the Chicago Cubs now and of the LA Rams. Those have been really
Awesome.
exciting additions as we build out this brand in the US. And so all of this money has been going towards building that platform. And so we're at this point now where we've finally connected the dots And we're going from selling unroasted coffee, which is also known as green coffee. We're going from selling the unroasted commodity to selling roasted coffee, which is really where we want to be. That's what this money has allowed us to do. What this investment has, what the faith investors have put in us has allowed us to do is build something that's never been built before. We have a lot more to do, but we're in a really exciting place.
That's huge. I want to point out something you mentioned at the very beginning of that was the fact that the way that you're helping out the other farmers there, right? With purchasing cherries from them, right? So not only do you have the 45 farms, but you're also buying from other farmers there. So it does make it like a two-way win because you're removing some competition, but at the same time, you're getting them exactly what they need. They don't have to worry about going out and trying to outsource to someone else. You guys are right there. You could purchase it. I think that's huge. When it comes to, like you had mentioned earlier, how people care about where their coffee comes from, right? They care about the sustainability. They care about how it's made and how it's grown and what kind of environment it's coming from. The story that you guys provide, it just makes it a lot more wholesome that when somebody purchases your product, they can feel good about it, that, that the people on the back end, the people that are all the way back in Colombia at the farm doing this are being taken care of. And I think that was one of the things I talked about with Cole as well, that from what, the farmers that you guys have are probably paid better than any of the other farmers from the way that he described it last time, which I thought was pretty awesome.
I think more than anything else, it's the formalization of the industry. We do pay. What I'm most proud of for the company is really Colombian coffee, and Colombia in general is a very informal economy. And so what that means is that your average worker is just paid in cash every week. So that's no way to build like a stable life, right? If you can just immediately be fired randomly, it's incredibly difficult to invest in yourself and invest in anything. A lot of farm laborers, if you get injured on the job, the farm owner may take you to the hospital, but then it's good luck. After that, there's no obligation. And so for us, one of our big pushes, which is challenging, is formalizing our workforce. So that means getting people set up in the healthcare system in Colombia, formalized banking accounts, pensions, right? We take for granted in the US are just unheard of in the coffee industry. And so it's really important, but it also takes a lot of like education to folks who don't know how the system works and also don't trust the system. And in some cases, they're right not to trust the system because they've been burned many times by it. And it's not me going out and talking to farmers. It's like our Colombian team going out and explaining what it is that our business is trying to do. And so that is really the big thing, is providing that level of stability for our workers. And then also for the farmers around us, giving them the ability to sell and make their money right away. That also provides a stability in rural Colombia that doesn't exist. It's a lot easier to invest in your farm if you know you can sell your product right away. And so these sorts of things, that stability it's hard to build, but it's very important.
Yeah, 100%. That's the feel good piece of it, right? But I also want to talk about investing on this podcast, right? You guys have quite a few investors, right, that helped you raise that 100 million under. But I want to talk about that as like alternative investments on this podcast here. Like, it's not just about real estate. It's not just about investing in the stock market and different commodities. There are other ways, other things you can invest in. So I want to talk about what it looks like on the agriculture side, right? Especially because of what you do for GCC. How do you feel about investors on the ag side? What would you say to somebody that might be thinking about investing on the ag side?
Yeah, I think agriculture is a very interesting space because it's a space that most people don't think about. If you're investing in the S&P 500 or tech stocks and things like that, the big focus now is on AI and things related to the internet and services. At the end of the day, we all need to eat. And that will never change 10 years or in 100 years. So agriculture
I want to jump in on that real quick because I say the same thing about real estate. We're always going to need a place to live. So
yeah, you'll always need a place to live. And to your point, like real estate is very popular. There's a lot of ways to invest in real estate, whether it's you buying your own home or starting a small fund and purchasing multifamily rentals. There's a number of ways for investors to actively participate. The challenge with agriculture is there aren't as many ways to actively participate. There's some funds out there where you can invest in farmland, but you do have to actually have a decent amount of money before you can start really investing in agriculture. But the way that we view it for our investors is agriculture is recession resistant. Coffee is a product that will always have a consumer. The demand has been rising steadily for decades. It's a product that continues to be drunk even when there's a recession. It's also inflation resistant, right? Agriculture rides out inflation much better than other industries. because the land itself has inherent value. It's not as exciting of a space for most people, but if you can find opportunities to invest in agriculture, you're not, depending on where you look, if you're looking in the US, it may not result in insane outsized returns. In alternative investing, though, there are opportunities to make outsized returns. The way that we look at it with Green Coffee Company is you're investing in a sector that hasn't received significant investment at the farm level in a long time, partially because people haven't really ever thought about investing in coffee at the farm level in this way before. And there's an opportunity to connect the dots like we're doing with this vertical integration that hasn't been done before. So we've been able to identify an opportunity within agriculture that's pretty unique. Even over time, these outsized returns are realized and things stabilize. It's coffee grows year over year. You got to invest in the crop, but demand continues to grow. It's a product that people will always buy. And so across agriculture in general, something that won't go away. So like corn demand, like the need for corn, the need for all sorts of commodities. There's a lot of money to be made in that space if you can find opportunities to invest in it.
Yeah, 100%. You're talking about the need for other things. There's definitely a need for coffee, just so people are tracking here. After serving 20 years in the Navy, I could tell you there's a need for coffee.
It's like the third most important liquid in the world, right? You have water, you have oil, and then you have coffee. I think more people are drinking like a cup of coffee than like a cup of water.
That's probably true. As you
It's
saw
I think in the US.
podcast,
There
I
you
was
go.
drinking
Yeah,
my
yeah.
coffee. I still have a couple more cups downstairs. I got to go finish off. So
There you go.
I drink a lot of coffee first thing in the morning. Probably too much, but anyway, we're not gonna get
Everything
into that.
in life is a balance, for sure.
Yes. But
I
do
try to
drink a
stick
lot
to
of
2 or
water
3 cups.
throughout the day to lower my acidity.
Absolutely.
All right, awesome. Obviously, you started off there in 2018, then you left and went and got your MBA and experienced some different sides of the ag world, and then you came back to Green Coffee Company. Were there some like outside lessons you learned when you were looking at the different agricultural aspects of, that side of business? Were there some lessons learned that you were able to bring to GCC and use that there?
Yeah, I would say a few things on that. Yes, I really valued my experience leaving the company because it just gave me a whole new perspective. One of the internships I did during my MBA was at one of the largest wine producing companies in the US, multi-billion-dollar business. One thing I saw there is that their vineyards are extremely efficient, right? Everything that comes off the vine is used for something. Like the seeds are used for something. They're used for like food coloring. The skins are used for something else. Like everything that the grapes that come off the tree or that come off the vine, excuse me, are used in some way. And they have their operations dialed in to an extent that it's just not, you don't see it in coffee, at least in Colombia where we've been operating, right? Seeing that level of efficiency and seeing that it's 100% possible. And then that once you have all the systems in place, things just can operate pretty smoothly. I found that it was a pretty like relaxed environment. They grew their grapes and that was that. And so seeing that there's like seeing a very well developed and efficient industry where billions and billions of dollars have been invested in finding the right grapes to grow in the right environment, finding the right watering techniques, how to deal with frost, other things like that. There have been if like the billions and billions of dollars that have been invested in vineyards it outstrips coffee immensely. So seeing that was really helpful for me. On the private equity side, this is more of a US comment. There are a lot of farmers that there's a generational shift that's happening. So you have farmers who have their massive plots of land and they're dying or retiring or whatever it happens to be. Maybe one of their children wants to take over the farm, or maybe none of them do and they got to sell it, right? So there's this generational shift happening where a lot of capital needs to change hands. The private equity company that I worked for was really working with a lot of farmers on making that happen in a way that traditional banks were not supporting in the same way. A lot of traditional banks don't understand agriculture, and so we're not as involved as I believe they should be in working with farmers on this like succession process that needs to occur. But I would also say on that side is that there's a lot of really smart people out there that know how to model out yields over many years. I learned a lot of differences between permanent crops, semi-permanent crops, semi-annual crops. Every type of agricultural product has a different model and investment structure And when I was looking at almond deals in California, that was very different from looking at blueberries in Peru, right? They also have a lot of common themes. Really valuable. Private equity group, I got to work on sharpen my financial analysis skills and make sure I can move quickly in building out models and talk the same language as we talk with larger institutions now. GCC is at a point where we're going to start making our transition to working with larger institutions to continue our growth trajectory. And that involves a different type of conversation as you work with larger groups. So it was all around a very useful experience to bring back both innovative and fully developed, realized industry that is wine, as well as the financial skills that I gained working in North Carolina.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And one of the things you started talking about at the beginning too, how they did it with wine, was using every piece of the grape, right?
Yeah.
Everything had a purpose or a use. And I know that's something that you all have been trying to do it with GCC as well, right? Even from the conversation I had with Cole, I know you guys take a lot of the byproducts, utilize it somehow. I think that's super important because, and that goes back to the sustainability piece, right? It's not just about getting that end product out. It's about what are you doing with everything else and the byproducts of the coffee that you're being able to create and sell. And I think that's super important. And especially for folks that are looking to invest, right? I think that's always a big question is what is the biggest efficiencies that you guys have? And that's something that's always going to get asked is how efficient are you with the product that you're creating with from the time that the coffee is planted to the time that you're harvesting? How efficient are you? How much water are you using? You talked about that with what you learned about with the grapes, how they've got that down to a science, right? And I think there's all these little things that you can keep working on to become more and more efficient. And I can see clearly that's what you guys have been doing. And I think that's really awesome. I know you mentioned that you guys are now looking to start talking with larger institutions now. So where do you see like Green Coffee Company heading in the next 1 to 5 years?
Within the next 2 to 3 years, what we want to do is IPO in the US, right? So we're a US holdco. That's really where we're headed in terms of an investment perspective. That's where our investors are going to realize their returns and get liquidity. What we need to do as a business is there's really 3 things that we need to do. We need to, in general, we need to realize the full vertical integration that we've been building over the past 8 years. And so that comes one with the roasted coffee sales, maximizing our roasted coffee sales in the US. So we're thrilled to have the Juan Valdez brand. We've partnered with their brand team here in Colombia, but we're thrilled to manage their relaunch in the US. And then on the private label side, working with restaurant groups, cafe chains, hotel chains, casinos, provide the back of the house coffee that they need in a way that hits their requirements on a price point, but then also the quality, consistency, and the story that they want. One of our great private label clients is the U.S. National Parks. They love our story, right? It's a natural fit for us. So finding more of those clients and moving all of our coffee, or as much as possible, from unroasted to roasted, that's a key aspect of our business. We need to keep scaling here in Colombia. So we have a new facility that we want to build that will allow us to meet our demand signals in the US. That facility is going to lower our costs. And it's also going to have a component to it that's a distillery, which is to your point about using all of the byproducts. We'll be using the cherry, which is really high in sugars, to distill it into ethanol, which then can be used in a whole host of products. But more than anything else, it reduces our environmental risk, and it allows us to generate profits. And as you talk to analysts, equity analysts, and express your story of where we're going, that is a massive potential for us. And so we need to have this new facility under at least fully built out and beginning to produce ethanol offloads to show that there is huge growth potential for this additional product that we used to have to pay money to get rid of. So having that business case fully built out is going to be really important for us over the next few years. And then just continuing to have our platform set, bringing on world-class talent and continuing to expand our business. I'd say post-IPO, what we want to do is replicate what we've done here in this one state in Colombia in many states within Colombia, right? Be in all the areas we want to be in with our model to have the supply side sorted and then continue our growth trajectory in the US, get into big box chains as we're already starting to. Juan Valdez is in Target and Harris Teeter, By the time this podcast launches, we'll be in Food Town in New York, which is, I don't know if whenever you go back, Food Town is a chain there, and then continue our roasted coffee growth in the US and then into the EU, which has a really heavy focus on sustainability and sustainable sourcing. And so we fit perfectly within their requirements, their legal requirements that they have for sourcing agricultural products. That's where we're hoping to go and build out the team and basically take a carbon copy of what we've created here in this one state in Antioquia in Colombia and replicate it. And we think that there's going to be huge opportunity to continue to modernize the sector and help lift up smaller farmers, stabilize the industry, and bring a coffee to consumers that they've been looking for. They've been looking for 100% traceable coffee and hit a price point that's not outrageous. That's what we've been working on thus far, and we see ourselves growing to that point. We want to be the next big global coffee player. That's our aspiration, and we believe we're in a unique spot to execute on that.
Yeah, absolutely. At least you guys are doing all the right things, and I hope you guys IPO before you get that distillery set up and start making the ethanol, because man, I think that's going to be huge for you guys. Because like you said, you used to pay to just get rid of that waste, right? And now you're going to be able to not only get rid of the waste, but actually make money off of it too, which is amazing. Create something that is very needed, right?
100%. So what we're doing thus far before we have the distillery is we're selling the sugary liquid to a local energy drink creator here in Colombia. We're able to get the sugary liquid is the most polluting and the most difficult to process and get rid of. We just signed an agreement with them. They send their trucks to our facilities and remove all of that liquid and pay us. It's not going to make us millions of dollars right now, but it's something that saves us money, lowers our environmental risk, and it's a good midpoint for us before we have the distillery set up.
Yeah, that's awesome. One of the things you could even look at doing is taking the ethanol and using that to power like some of your facilities too, which is
you're not far off base
awesome,
there,
man, with what you guys are doing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love it. So Robbie, that is awesome. Now I'd like to transition into something that I call the final round. I'm going to ask you 4 questions I ask everybody that comes on the show, and it digs a little bit more into you personally, but it gives us a better idea of how you are under a little bit of pressure, but nothing crazy. So If you're ready to go, we'll get that started.
I'm ready.
Awesome. Okay. So Robbie, the first question for you, the final round is, what's the biggest mistake you've ever made when it comes to your finances or business life?
I'd say on a finances perspective, I've made some investments personally in like industries that were really on the move, right? I thought that I could ride the wave that everyone else was riding. I made an investment. It wasn't a lot, but for me at the time, I was in my early 20s. So it was like, I think I made a $1,000 investment. It started like losing value. Rather than sinking my costs and just getting out, I kept waiting. And then I just stopped looking at it because it scared me. And I was like, I don't want to lose money. So I just ignored it. That is not the right attitude, right? A lot of investing is about having a thesis in your head about what you're trying to get out of it. And if it's not working, you got to cut your losses and move on, right? For me, that was a very valuable lesson. I ended up losing the entire $1,000 that I invested. For me, when I was younger, that was a big deal. What that taught me more than anything is you have to know what you want as you make your investment. And then if things aren't working out, if things aren't going in the way that you want them to go, you have to take a decision and move on. That was something, move quickly. And for me, it was about like trusting my gut.
Yeah, that's fair enough. A lot of times it might seem like a little amount now, but back then that's a big deal. And
yeah,
I think I've had this problem before too, like ignoring something where that's not really working out too well, and not the best thing to do. Don't ignore it. You should stay on top of it and try to get ahead. So yeah, definitely
rip off the Band-Aid.
I could definitely resonate with that and appreciate that answer. So the next question for you, Robbie, is what is something that you've learned that you wish you knew when you first started out?
I think for me, I'm actually going to come back to the trusting my gut. This isn't advice for everyone, right? Some people are very impulsive and they make decisions very quickly. They only trust their gut. I am not that kind of person. I sit on something a lot. I doubt myself a lot of, do I really know? Like someone may say something that I'm working with and I'm like, I don't think that's right. I think we actually need to do something else instead. For me, it took me a long time to realize that, oftentimes what I thought first had a lot of merit. Whether or not it was 100% correct, it had a lot of merit and I should take it seriously. And I think going back to my earlier point about the failures that I've had, a lot of it has to do with being too doubtful of my own abilities. I've worked really hard throughout school and at work. I know what I'm talking about more than I give myself credit for. And what I would say for people starting out, if that resonates with you, if you're the kind of person that is very hesitant to make decisions, you'd be surprised at how much your inner voice may know about what it is you need to do in a certain situation. And so for me, that I would say like having the confidence to listen to yourself. Like I said, that shouldn't apply for everyone. That's for someone like me getting started, having the confidence to say how you feel to your boss about something that might not be going the way that you think it should be going. You got to just lean in and say your piece.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. 100%. A lot of times there are people that should trust their gut when they don't. And I think it can go both ways there too. There's sometimes where people trust their gut too much and maybe give that a break.
Absolutely.
And stop
Yeah,
a
it's a
little bit.
hard balance. It's a
It
hard
is.
balance.
It
Everyone
is.
is different. That's just what I have found personally.
Yeah, that's fair. So for this next question, let's say somebody who's just getting out of college or wrapping up their MBA, do you have any tips or tricks that you would recommend to someone that is just getting started today, like in business?
I would say, like on the investing side of things, most of your money should just go into index funds. You're not going to beat the market. That is what all the great minds say. You don't need to listen to me. Many people say that. What I would say is one way to think about investing is to learn about something, right? So for me, like on the coffee side, I'm invested in GCC. I'm actively learning about the coffee sector every day, and I can see what works and what doesn't work. Whether it's in real estate or in any other sector, if you want to put your own capital to work outside of just letting it sit somewhere and grow on its own, you should be actively involved with it, right? Then the money that you put to work, you can learn a lot about people, about how industries work, and at least face your successes and failures head on. For me, is really important. And you learn so much when your own money is on the line because you care a lot more about what's going on. So on the investing side of things, that's what I would say there. On the business side of things, I think being a good communicator and talking to everyone that you can is really helpful. I would never stop reaching out to people and having conversations. You'd be surprised at the people who will answer your email and will be willing to talk to you, especially when you're young and trying to learn things. And that's also a great way to find jobs, is just reaching out to folks and trying to learn from everyone you can, both within your network and outside of it.
Yeah. Or take them out for a cup of Juan Valdez coffee,
Absolutely.
and ask some
Please do.
questions. Right? Awesome. Final question, the final round for you, Robbie, is do you have a favorite business, investing, or real estate related book or podcast or both?
I would say one of the podcasts I listen to is Invest Like the Best with Patrick O'Shaughnessy. He always has on really interesting guests. That's a great way to learn about different sectors and start dipping your toes into different sectors. And they just have a lot of types of investments that you never think about, and a lot of people doing really unique things in like consumer products and in tech. And they also hit on a lot of trends. So it's a great way to stay up to date on what's going on. For business books, a really informative book for me that I read when I was younger was The Big Short, the book about the financial crisis. It's very complicated. And so diving into something that is incredibly complex and actually doing my best to try to understand what happened during the recession, that was a great mental exercise for me. You think about the future. What happened in the past, like these things often repeat themselves in the future in some new way. And so learning like how hubris manifests itself in investing and in these industries, that applies everywhere. But then I would go one step further, Mike, and say that I read a lot of fiction. I read a lot of just novels and biographies and other things. For me, it ties in with being a good communicator and being articulate. One of my favorite books that I read recently was The Sand Counties Almanac, which is by Aldo Leopold. He just writes so beautifully. And I find that being able to write well and communicate your ideas, like that applies whether you're reading a novel, like whether you're writing a novel or putting together a pitch deck. Being able to create a narrative and explain something that's complex simply, that's really useful. So I would not shy away from reading books. Get someone else's brain in your brain for a little bit because it helps you think and helps you be a better, more articulate and a better communicator. I would not shy away from books that only are business focused because in general, they're very helpful.
Absolutely. It gets the creative juices flowing and gets you thinking about
Yeah.
something different instead of just being on a one-track mind all the time. I think that's definitely important. So, Robbie, that is it for the final round. You survived. So great job.
Great.
Great recommendations too, as well, with the podcast and the book. So I definitely appreciate that. But now I have another question I want to ask you, and it's probably the most important question of the entire podcast. And that is, where can people find more information about you or Green Coffee Company? Can you share your website with us? Any social media profiles we can follow? Where can we purchase Juan Valdez coffee as well?
I'd say to support us, the best place to purchase Juan Valdez is on our website, which is juanvaldezcafe.com. I'll give you the link. It might actually be juanvaldezcafestore.com. We can include the link in the description.
Yep, we'll get that in the show notes for sure.
We have a whole host of products on there. We are on walmart.com, target.com as well. As time goes on, hopefully we'll be in more and more grocery stores. But like I said, the best place to purchase Juan Valdez is on our website. There's some great discounts on there for folks who want to subscribe. That's what I would recommend. And please let us know what you think of it if you have any recommendations for how we can make it better. If you want to know more about Green Coffee Company specifically, outside of just the brand, you can go to greencoffeecompany.com. That's where our website is. You can reach out to us if you want to learn more, if you want to buy coffee, if you manage a number of franchises. We work with all sorts of folks. So you can reach out to us on our form there as well.
Robbie, really appreciate that. And like you had mentioned, I said before too, we're going to get all of these links in the show notes. So for our listeners, you all know the drill. If you're driving right now, please don't try to click or open the link right now. Wait till you're in a safe place. But Robbie, I want to say I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me today and share not only your story, but also continue the story of Green Coffee Company from the last episode that we had and give us an update as to where you are now and where you are going. And I, for one, can say I'm very excited to see where you guys are all headed. And I think it's really amazing. So thank you so much for taking the time today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike. It was great chatting with you, and have a great rest of your day in Hawaii.
Yeah, you too. And also, I want to say thank you to all of our listeners. I want to thank you also very much for joining me and our special guest, Robby Kuster, on the Average Joe Finances podcast. I would love it if you would go leave us a 5-star review and tell us what you liked about today's episode with Robbie. Aloha from Hawaii, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you for making it to the end of this episode. Greatly appreciate you being here with me today on the Average Joe Finances podcast. If you haven't done so yet, make this the episode that you go leave us a 5-star rating or subscribe to our YouTube channel. The Average Joe Finances podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. Have an outstanding day.